Mr. Devon, welcome. I'm super excited to talk to you. I've been wanting to talk to you for the last week. Once I found out exactly who you were and I saw what you've accomplished, well, I'll be honest with you. When I saw your Kickstarter campaign and when I saw your game, I thought, I don't really know if I want a AAA studio on my podcast.
Oh.
I'm being serious because I messaged my producer. I was like, "Are you sure this isn't AAA?" It has that AAA feel and that vibe. Your game is called Elements, and it's well, frankly, I'll just say this, and then I'll let you introduce yourself. Elements is the game that I would tell. This might offend you. It's the game I would tell my audience not to make, and the reason why is because the scope is kind of scary. It's an open world Zelda inspired game. And so that's my introduction for you. It's a huge compliment. I hope you realize that's a compliment because you're pulling it off. Anyway, Devon, give me an introduction here. Did I do a good job?
You did. And thank you. That really baffles me when you say like you thought it was AAA, and that's super flattering, and I appreciate that, especially coming from yourself. I've watched your stuff for a long time, and the quality of your stuff is, I would say, AAA. So that means a lot.
Appreciate it.
So I'm Devon Parsons. I'm making a game called Elements. And I started on this journey about 3 years ago, and now we're here, still working on it.
Gotcha. Is this your first game, by the way, Elements?
It is. I've done animation and video production for the past 10 years, but game-wise, this is my first jump in.
I have a suspicion that you have a prominent career prior to game dev. And the reason I say that, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong or right, but the reason I say that is because game dev is a culmination of a ton of different skill sets. Management, time management, working with a team, communication, asset management, knowing how to plan things, like actually realize that there's a set order of things. So for example, you don't put a roof on a house before you lay the foundation, that kind of stuff. There's a process. And so my question to you is, did you have a prominent career before game dev?
By the way, if you're like me and you always dreamt of making an indie game as a full-time job, I have a free webinar below that goes into exactly how to make six figures with just a demo. I was just like you for years. I thought I had to make a game in its entirety before getting a paycheck, but there's actually 3 ways to make six figures before even finishing your game. I've done this multiple times, so check it out below if you do want to go full-time indie. And thanks for watching.
Career, no, but I did my own. I guess I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And so I used that 10 plus years of working on my own businesses, which was video production, animation, and doing all those things that you say. So I would have to tell stories, making videos or animations for businesses, tell stories for short films. I had to worry about audio and composition and color grading and everything that actually translates into games. So I did that for a long time, and I just never did it in an interactive form.
Right.
Yeah.
Is making games more complicated or less complicated?
Yeah. Well, the way I was thinking about it the other day was, it's when you make a film, you're building something and the viewer is watching it, and then exactly what you made is how they receive it. When you're making a game, you have this input from the player, and they can decide to do whatever they want to do, and you have to account for that. So I think it's enormously more difficult to make a game. Not that it's easy to make a film at all, but there's just so much more that you have to think about.
I'm going to toot my own horn here a little bit because, and sort of just piggyback off of what you said there. I got into making short horror films in the last 4 years. So like making games, I've been doing it for, over a decade. But making short horror films, I got into as well. And I thought I kind of thought about it backwards, where I was like, this is the next step up the ladder.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pretend that I'm a genius director or whatever. But in terms of complexity, it's much more simpler, especially in the storytelling department with film, because you can control in a linear way, you can control the story and what's being told. You know what I mean? And so I found myself on set, doing these films where like some people would say, man, I do sound like I'm bragging here, but some people would say like on set, they'd be like, it's crazy how you know how to do this. And I'm like, well, this is nothing compared to trying to tell a story when the player has control over the story. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I totally know what you mean. Yeah, we have to think about every possibility that the player might do. And like so one of the difficulties like I'm facing having an open world game is how and where do I place those story beats to tell a story, because Elements is a very narrative driven game. But if I want to give the player freedom to go start in the nature biome, and then if they want to go to the ice biome, like how do I ensure that the players are still getting a similar story in doing that? So those are one of the difficult things you don't have to think about. If you're doing a film, it would just be like, okay, you're going here first, then here first, and then that's it, right? But now we have all these options.
You outline it in your screenplay.
Yeah.
And then you storyboard it, and then you get your shot list, and then you're scheduled together, you get your team together, and you follow the shot list and the schedule. You know what I mean? Whereas with game development, it's like, how exactly do you, if your game is story driven, which my next game, Twisted Tower, is very story driven. It's different than yours because it's very linear.
Looks awesome, by the way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's probably not the best kind of game to make in this day and age, because linear shooters, that's like early 2000s. That's like my life, though. I love that. That's what I was raised with.
Yeah.
But long story short, putting together a story for Twisted Tower, to me it made complete sense. Like I had a team of my team. We're making a game together. We're sort of building this game in a bubble, and so we play the demo. And we're like, that's great. The story's flowing. Everything's working. The rhythm is there. And we're just really, really proud of this demo. And then we start sending it off to people who don't know anything about the game. And we say, hey, play the demo. And devastating. Devastating. And I have a feeling you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do.
Like
I do.
The playtesting just gives you a kidney stone like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I had the exact experience. So, like, after, when we, the first PAX we did PAX East after partnered with Apogee, and having players play the game was the first time that ever happened. And especially the game being kind of open, like, I always thought, okay, the players are going to see that and they're going to go towards the village. But some players just want to go the other way and go over to try to climb the mountain that you didn't have time to finish yet. And you're just, the whole time, you're just like, oh my goodness gracious, what? Well, why are you doing that? Like, and you want to say it, but you also want to get the knowledge of what the other player might do. Yeah.
It scares me because it's like when I'm in these situations and I'm it's kind of like when I'm with a friend and they're driving poorly and I'm in the passenger seat. I don't want to be rude, but I'm like, hey, put the brakes on. I just want to shout it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drive better.
Yeah.
And the same is true with game dev, but you can't do it. You can't do that.
No.
You can't tell the player to do X, Y, and Z from over their shoulder. You have to do it in a And what's even more difficult is you have to do it in the game. You have to do it with some kind of prompt or signposting or UI or something. And then this is the kicker. You have to do it in a way that's not insulting or makes them feel like you're holding their hand. You have to hold their hand without them knowing you're holding their hand.
Yes, you have to know what you have to try to anticipate what they're going to think and sneak it in and make it feel like they discovered that on their own. Yeah.
That's right.
And that's one of the hardest things to do, I think.
So I want to get a stress level metric. I want to figure out what your stress levels are. And then I'm going to ask you, once I get your stress levels, I'm going to ask you to tell me your story. Okay, so let's start at the end here. You're sprinting this race. Right now you're in the middle of a sprint, right? You're trying to get this game done.
Yeah. How
are your stress levels? 1 being, this is a breeze. 10 being, I really could smoke a cigarette right now.
I would say right now I'm at a 5. And the reason I'm not at a 10 is because I decided that I wasn't going to let myself get to a 10 anymore. So 5 is probably my peak now because I've been at a 10 a few times. It seems like any time you want to show your game, like I've been to PAX East and PAX West a few times.
Yeah.
And every time, without fail, I am finishing the build and packaging it almost to the minute before I have to get into a vehicle to go to the airport. So it's like that saying of the time that you like your workload will expand to the time you have. And so I don't want to have that feeling anymore. It's just, I mean, it's not good to have that. So I'm trying to like keep that low. But
how do you do that?
Take walks. No, like literally, like
so funny. Yeah.
You just have to like I mean, I haven't figured it out. That's for sure. But I think you have to look at it as a marathon and not a sprint. Because when first started this game, I thought it would maybe take 2 years, and now we're like 3.5 years in. I mean, till the game is finally finished, it might end up being 5, and like that's a long time. So if you want to be on stress level 10 for 5 years, like that's detrimental to your health. So what I try to do is just look at it as a marathon and just clock in the mornings and then take some breaks, and then when everyone goes to sleep, I work again and get it up and do it all over again. But as long as I know
you're working after your wife goes to bed, or
well, that's the best time. Everybody, yeah, my wife and kids. I mean, that's the best time because no one's bothering you, right? So you probably
for me it's 8 to 5, and the rule in my house is pretend I'm not at the house working.
That's a good rule.
It makes me sound like an a-hole. It's just that's how I grew up. My dad, you didn't mess with him while he worked.
Yeah.
And so in my case, it's like 8 to 5. I'm out of commission.
Yeah.
And then after that, let's play and wrestle and have fun. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I try to do that, but most times the kids are at school, so it's not it's not like they're bugging me. My kid's bugging me, like, really. But yeah, it's something that like this game is like the thing I want to do. It's like whenever we're home and like we're not doing something as a family and everyone's doing their own things, like my wife's reading a book and the kids are playing video games or they're playing outside or whatever, like this is the thing I want to do. So that means that I do want to do it like when everyone else is in bed and I have some time, Not saying that you should sacrifice sleep, because I still have to set an alarm to put myself to bed. But
That's hilarious. You need an alarm to go to bed.
I know you've had to have been there at the, like,
of course.
You've got to a point now where you've figured it out, quote unquote. But like at the beginning, you're probably the same. Like, I mean,
Sure.
if you're
Sure.
down and you're into something that you want to do all the time, it's like a time portal, and you just, unless you tell yourself to go to sleep or tell yourself that it's time to stop, then I mean, you could just.
Well, I'll be candid here. Me and my wife have been working through this ever since we got married, over 10 years ago. She knows that you sound very similar, Devon. My brain operates on okay. I'm addicted to creativity, and it is a problem. I'll say that. It certainly sounds pretentious, believe me. But I need it.
No, it doesn't.
I need it. If I'm not building something, I go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I get stir crazy. So vacations for me, I've told my wife this, and she doesn't like it, and no wife should, but I don't like going on vacation. I can't. It's so hard. I just want to make something and build something and create, no matter what it is. I want to write music or. So like I was born with this tick, this need to get a constant hit of, I guess it's dopamine or something, where if I make something and I see it created, I get this rush.
Yeah.
Now the problem with that, and maybe tell me if this is how you are, the problem with that is that when it's 2 a.m. and I know my kids are going to wake me up at 6 a.m,
mm-hmm.
I can't stop. I cannot stop. It's like a drug, and so you just keep going. So I totally understand that feeling of you need an alarm to stop. And I don't know what it is about game dev. What do you think it is? Something about game dev where you cannot stop doing it. What is that?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of people are like that playing video games, and I mean, I've been at that point where I was the person playing games and I want to play all night. Destiny. So
Oh wow.
And but now I think it's, once you figure out that you can play a part in creating that for someone, it's like you have that addiction, because you know that, like, you start to see video games in a different light, and now when I play video games, I look and I'm like, I was playing the other day and my buddy's like, all right, stop looking at the textures. Like, he just knew I was, because I'm like trying to like recreate how they did what they did and why they did it.
Sure.
So if we can play a part in that and then have someone play that, it's like, I think it's personally more addicting, I guess, quote unquote. But
what do you think, Devon? What do you think drives? Let's just speak for you personally. What drives you? What's the deep? If we could just drill down and drill down and drill down until we're at your like subconscious level, like your id.
yeah.
I don't know if that's the right psychological term. If we could drill down, what is it that makes you want to create a game? And like you said, have someone play it.
Yeah.
Who cares? What is this? Is it about the money?
No. So I think it's two things. I want to build something that can impact or change someone's life for the better. I think I'm inherently a people pleaser. Like, I want everyone to like me. So I want everyone, which I know is impossible, to like the game I create. But also I want to build something that will stand the test of time. I mean, I won't be here forever, but potentially, if I build something great enough, like maybe it can be around for 1,000 years. And I don't know why I care about that. But I feel like if I build something that's positively impactful for someone, and then that is something that can like last longer than I can last, then I can give that much more, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really wonderfully poetic answer. Sadly, mine is not that.
What is yours?
Mine is like, I don't know. I'm so interested in this question. I like to ask this because for me, it's almost, that's why I bring up drugs. It's like, for me, it's not about changing the world. I wish I was as good a person as you.
Please.
And also, it's not about legacy for me because, frankly, I actually, personally, my belief is that our games will die probably in 10, 15 years. I mean, if we're lucky, our games will surpass our own life. But I think most game developers, no one's going to remember their game at their funeral. They'll remember their children.
Yeah.
But I hope my kids are at my funeral and they want to speak and say good things about me. So it's not about legacy building for me necessarily. I'm not arguing with you. I just know for me that's not something I think about. For me, it's this weird. I hearken it to playing God. So like, and then I want to hear your whole story. But I talked about this with a previous guest. It's on my previous podcast. I think his name. Who was it? Who did I talk to? Josh Chambers. He's awesome. Josh Chambers is super philosophical and has a lot of really heady thoughts, and I love the guy. And something that I've been thinking about is how making games is kind of like playing God. So the way that I live my life, the way that I think about things is I think everything feels like it should be eternal. So like the idea of death, the idea of things ending, it creates, or you mourn that. Your body mourns that. You're like, wow, I don't want to die. That's sad. Or when I moved out of that apartment or that house, it was sad seeing it empty because that's a part of my life that died. So seeing things die and change is painful because there's something eternal in our subconscious. So this is definitely getting more esoteric and spiritual, but all I'm saying is that when you create something and build something, it feels like you're participating in something that's almost godlike. Mm-hmm. It's almost outside of you. And there's this sensation of, I have power and I have control over this little thing. Have you ever felt like you're playing God when you make a game, that you're building this little mini world and you feel a sense of control that maybe you don't have outside of that?
Yeah, well, 100%, especially building a world that literally has mountains and rivers and lakes and oceans. Like, I feel like I'm building a place that I would want to be in. And when I'm doing that, and then I get to play it, and I get to try to anticipate what other players will do in that world. I think that is pretty much, exactly the same thing that you're saying. But also, if you are, quote unquote, playing God, then you are affecting these players in when they play and what they do. So So do you think about that when you're building?
Do I think about the NPCs I'm affecting?
Like how these people that play their game, the players, how they will feel when they play.
You know, and I think that's such a good point, Devon, because I think that's ultimately what I love. Mm-hmm. I think it's almost like I'm allowed to mess with the player if I want to mess with the player.
Yeah.
And it gives it. I'll put it out there. It's perhaps a power play. It's this one thing that you can do where you're in control.
Yeah.
And so here, an example of this is that we have these treasure chests in our game Twisted Tower, and you have to pay to open them. And most of them you can see through. They're glass. So you can look inside and say, oh, I want to buy that. And you open it up, and then you get some goodies or some snacks or health or ammo or something. But there's some that are opaque, and they have a big question mark on them. And there's something really, really fun about making one that's worth, you have to pay $1,000 to open it, and inside there's only $1. Like, that's fun to me as a game, not as a gamer, but as a developer. It's like, let's mess with the player.
It's like the mystery box.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's something fun about controlling the emotional state of your players. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's a good thing. I just know that that's really fun. It's like you're a magician, you know, and you're in control of how you know what's happening behind the scenes, but what's presented is impressive. And so you feel almost like a master charlatan, and it's really fun.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And every time that I place an enemy, a bandit camp, a treasure chest, I'm thinking about how will the player find this, and what am I going to give them, and will they feel this way? Will they feel that way? I mean, like that multiplies throughout the entire game you're building. So by the end of it, it's like you just have no idea, but you hope you made the right decisions.
That's right.
But it's going to be up to the player to make them in the end.
To piggyback off of that, it really comes down to, I think, as a game designer and as a game developer, you kind of have to have a good, I don't know, like a good self-awareness and awareness of human psychology. It's so funny because whenever I'm talking to game developers on this podcast, they're always so socially aware. Like they're good at having a conversation. And I think what that is they're able to predict how Thomas feels, and they're able to predict how people feel during a conversation. Some of my best friends, I was telling my wife this yesterday, I was like, I find myself gravitating towards game developers as friends. And I'll tell you, be completely blunt. There's some game developers out there who are some weird kids. There's some weird kids in the game development community, and I love it. I love it though, because they're so socially. There's this strange in-tuneness with themselves. Yeah. Because if you're going to be a successful game developer, you have to be able to predict human psychology. Do you feel like that's true of you?
Yeah, and like I went to school and I majored in psychology. I majored in criminology and minored in psychology. And
wow.
So that was my whole thing before. I mean, my life plan was to become, police officer or detective or whatever. And I think that is a lot of, trying to figure what people are doing, or what they're going to do. And whenever I find myself having conversations with friends or people that I just meet, I always want to know their story, and I want to know if I can do anything to like aid in that and like help bring something to the surface, or like give them a different perspective. So I think that translates into games, because I'm always trying to anticipate what the player's going to do. And
absolutely,
it's not easy, and I'm hoping I make some good decisions for the game, but it's something that I've always done, and I just want to. I mean, I'm the type of person that I'll go to a hotel and I'll be like, all right, so this is what they should have done. because there's this is not this way, this should be that way. So I'm trying to like design that in my game, and it's like when someone walks in,
hilarious.
I see this and they're like, oh, that should have been that way. I want to like have that done before someone else can point it out.
Well, I love that we're sort of hopping back to your initial career, because I want a good chunk of this podcast starting now. I would love to hear your story, starting from, was this ever a dream? So starting back when you were a kid and in college and even through your film career. I want to hear about that, but I also want to mainly I want to hear, and I know my audience wants to hear this, because look, they're looking at you, Devon, and they're going, I could never do what Devon's doing.
You can.
There's no way. There's no way. The indie game dream is dead. It's over. It's not 2012 anymore, whatever, right? So my question to you is, you were at law school, or criminal
university? Yeah, just university. So just.
Did you graduate?
Yeah. So I have a degree in criminology, which
that's crazy.
Literally means nothing.
No, I think it's really cool.
Just an expensive
it means
piece of paper.
That's so cool, though. I'm super into, like, we've been watching. Me and my wife have been watching. Oh, come on, Innocent.
Presumed Innocent. So good.
Presumed Innocent. Yeah.
Did you finish
it wasn't
it?
good until the last episode. The last episode was stupid, but
we can't talk about it. But we have to talk about that.
Yeah, we
sidebar.
We cannot talk about it. But
no. Yeah.
You could tell it was manufactured by Apple. They come in there and they say, we want to do this, and it's like, no, don't do that. Don't change it. But anyway, no spoilers. Great show, though.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
And now we're watching the original with Harrison Ford to sort of compare.
Oh, nice.
That said, though, Devon, so we've got you getting this degree in criminology, which is, I think that's awesome. So audiences listening right now, they want to be you. You're living the dream. Okay. And by the way, people listening right now in the comments, is Devon living your dream? Let us know.
I'm not living the dream. But only
I would say, Devon, the reason you're living the dream is because you're published by Apogee. And Apogee is this OG game brand. That is amazing. So you are living the dream. So that's a preface for me to say, you're living the dream. Now tell my audience how you did it and how they can do it too. Start from the beginning and ramble. Let's go.
First, I would say I'm not living the dream because I'm published. I'm living the dream, I guess, because I get to do what I want to do every day. And I feel like a lot of people, I'd say the majority, don't get to. Thomas, I think you get to do what you want to do every day. But I think the number of percentile is probably pretty low, and I wish that it was higher. And one of the things I do when I meet someone for the first time, I say, what would you do if you won $100 million? What would you do every day with your day? And if you can come up with an answer on what you would do every day, like maybe that should be something that you're pointing yourself towards. And if I won the lottery tomorrow, not much would change. I would still be making this game. So my story, how far back do you want me to go?
Well, let's not go back to conception.
Okay.
I think that would be a little weird.
So I was,
but I think after you got your degree,
okay.
Like a lot of people, I think where we want to start is we want to start at the place where you kind of got a hint of like, I'm kind of unhappy and I kind of want to make a game.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
So I grew up a gamer. I think 4 years old is when I first had an Atari. I might have been 3, and I got my Nintendo when I was 4. I can't remember exactly. So my whole life, I've played games. But I never really thought like this is something that I could do. So I went about my life. I joined the military at 17. I was in for 12 years, went to university, got a degree. And I was
What branch of the military?
Communications, so Army.
Okay, Army, cool.
And while I was in there, I did kind of a desk job within the Army, which was an image tech, which is someone who goes around. I don't know how I got this awesome gig, but you go around and you take pictures of like the cool exercises that everyone's doing and like the fun stuff for the Army, and they use those images and videos like for the public to kind of get more people interested. So I also at that time started video production. There was a contest for Doritos chips, and I decided that I would put a contest video out, and it was terrible. It was so bad. But I just got hooked, and I got hooked on making things for people and hooked on making things that people would see. So I started a business. Started small, charging people a little bit, and then slowly raising that over time, and eventually got into animation. And then when the pandemic hit, I lost a big contract and I had a little bit extra time. So I'm not sure what spurred it, but probably some YouTube's videos, possibly some of your videos, showing that like anyone can do this. I searched up so I downloaded Unreal Engine. I searched up how to make an RPG, and the first playlist that came up, I just played it and I followed it in Unreal Engine. And after I was done the tutorial, like it was quite basic, but I was kind of hooked. And after that, I just decided that I would spend a little bit of money on some assets. Unreal Engine gives you a lot of free stuff, but I had in my mind this game I wanted to make. It kind of coincided with playing Zelda Breath of the Wild with my kids, and like it's a single player game, so you have to kind of, when someone dies, if you're playing with someone, you hand them the controller and then it's their turn. And I was like, it'd be pretty cool. It'd be pretty cool if like this was split screen co-op, like I grew up playing all the split screen co-op games. Like I would go to Blockbuster and rent a game like every weekend. Me and my buddy would like beat it. And whenever we found one that was split screen co-op, like it was that much more exciting because you don't have to do that, like pass the controller back. So that coincided the same time I downloaded Unreal Engine, and I came up with an idea for a game, and I just started making it. So I got like a base mesh actually from, I think one of the other, might have been ArtStation, and kind of tweaked it a little bit. And then I started putting enemies in there and environments, and within like 6 months I had a prototype. So I posted on Twitter. I think actually the first post I did was on Imager, and like the first post went viral, which was ridiculous. Because like I didn't even know what Imager was. I literally Googled like, how do you market a game, and like that came up. So I had a viral post, and then I was like, okay, what do I do? So I threw up a website, I opened up a Discord, and then the community started growing right there. And then within that 6 months time, after I was posting on Twitter for a bit, we're getting some wish lists and getting some followers. Scott Miller from Apogee reached out to me and over Discord, and like he's kind of a big deal in the gaming sphere. So like
sorry to interrupt you, but can you let our audience know why Scott?
He's had his hands in and helped create a lot of games like Duke Nukem, Max Payne, like some games, even like games like Raptor, Commander Keen, like games that I grew up playing. Like I have floppy disks still somewhere in my house of like Raptor, like 3 I think it was 3 for I can't remember now, but so like literally played games that this person has created, and they were like reaching out to me, so I didn't really believe it. And I told my buddy, and he's like,
and his podcast is I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want people to know his podcast is below in the link in the description. I did one with him.
Yeah, really good actually.
So
really good.
He's a brilliant guy, and has a lot of fun tweets. So follow him on Twitter as well. So go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so like he reached out to me. I told my buddy, and he was like, "That's a scammer, bud. Like that's not him. That's not the real guy." So I did some research. And eventually, like I figured out that it was actually him. And he said, "I saw your game." He's like, "Would you like to talk?" And we talked, and he said that he wanted to publish a game, and I was like, "What is happening right now?" Like I didn't really.
Oh man.
Like I wasn't looking for that, but like it seemed like the stars had kind of aligned or whatever, and so I thought it might be a good fit, and we made a deal. And then within the next like month or so, I was full time. Part of the deal was, funding for like a year and a half or whatever it was, and so that's how it happened.
Man, that is... I want everyone listen. How about this? Let me ask you a question. Do you feel... This is let's get an honest answer out of you as best as you can. Do you feel that you were born with... I think I'm going to sound like Liam Neeson here. A unique set of skills.
What a good movie.
That's a great movie. Were you born with this? I'm just gonna. It seems like you were born not with a golden horseshoe up your butt, but close. You were born with this ability to just identify like what the next move is.
Yeah.
And failure doesn't really happen to you very much.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, maybe I would say that. But I think it's because. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. I wrote a book and it was a flop. Okay.
You did?
I have like hundreds of copies still. So there are failures. It's just like mitigating that failure and learning from it. So the reason that didn't work was because I had zero marketing. So the learning from that is not to have zero marketing. So market the heck out of it. So it's funny though you say that, because like my wife, I'm not sure if you're a fan of Seinfeld, but there's that episode of
I love Seinfeld,
where he's like Even Steven, he always finds he finds a 20 in his pocket. It's like everything happens. Yeah. It's like I feel sometimes like that is like what happens for me. But yeah, and then so things after that just kind of kept rolling. Like my daughter, I planned her to voice the main character. She was at the time 9, I think, but she wasn't old enough. The character's supposed to be 12 in the game, so she wasn't old enough. And I did a test, like giving her some lines for the voiceover, and she, within like the first 10 minutes, she's like, "Dad, are we done yet?" And I'm like, "Well, if you're gonna voice all these lines in the game, I don't think we're even close." So Apogee, at around the same time, they had someone who works at Apogee, Jaron. He happened to know Patricia Somerset, who just happens to be the voice of Zelda in Zelda Breath of the Wild. So yeah, so they said, "Would you like Patricia to voice your main character?" And I was like, "What? Really?" So we like met digitally and talked, and so Zelda literally is the voice of our main character.
That is amazing. And so a lot of people listening right now, they might think of man, I don't want to work with a publisher that's scary, you know, and I don't need their money. The truth is, though, as a publisher, they have these connections. First publisher deal, well, the second deal I signed, the first one I signed, I was 18, and it was a bad deal, and we ended up buying the game back. But the second publisher agreement that I signed, the CEO reached out to me, and he said, hey, you know, just FYI, Sean Astin is interested in voicing one of your characters. Sean Astin being Samwise Gamgee.
Nice.
From Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
And I was like, and I'm like a 25-year-old in a cubicle at a marketing agency. It makes zero sense. And funnily enough, I'm that picky that I actually didn't even do it because I was like, it's just not. It's not the right voice for my character. Yeah, I need like a emo, grungy kind of edgy guy. Point being, though, publishers have connections.
Yeah.
So it's more than just money, right?
Yeah.
Publishers also might have a set of devil horns. They might have that too. So you've got to be careful about what the publisher has. Some things are good, some things are bad.
Yeah.
So you've got to really vet your publisher. Apogee, I've had conversations with them, and we've actually negotiated before. Great guy, Scott. Great guy, Scott. So they seem to be legit, super happy about Apogee. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no, I don't think you interrupted that. Yeah, and I think if for anyone who's like thinking about getting a publisher or has been approached, like you have to look at it as like a long-term relationship. Like, you know, you want this person to be your friend, someone you're going to like be your family. Like you're going to be spending time with them, and you're going to be doing things with them and with the game. And if you're not, I thought about this a while back, and it's like, if you're not going to have dinner at Christmas time with these people, like if you wouldn't, like, then you probably shouldn't be working with them. Like,
that's right.
So
that's right.
And it just happened to be like Apogee fit well with me, and then we went to PAX, and like it was instantly like just a connection. Like all the other developers, like just like instant bond, and like no one had any big heads, and like we were all just cool and chill, and like it just felt like a right fit, and it still does. And I mean, you have to kind of parse that out when you're talking to someone, and like just picking up the phone and talking to someone, you'll be able to tell.
You know, it's hard to tell though, because some people listening right now, when the word or the phrase $100,000 is thrown in front of them, or they hear that on a Discord call or a Zoom call with a publisher, suddenly it's very difficult to interpret whether the person they're talking to could be someone they get a beer with, or could be somebody you hang out with and get dinner with. Yeah. Money tends to skew and blur our perception of whether a publisher is actually legitimate. I've been there. I worked with a publisher, signed a deal, got some money. And again, this was when I was younger. And I shouldn't have. But the money was so enticing. I mean, can you imagine being 18 years old and a publisher's talking about $20,000?
Yeah.
You know? So you've got to be very, 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 very you got to be willing to say no to money, and careful. 100%. You got to be willing to say no to the money, because like you said, totally agree with you.
And it's not the only way.
It's a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
and that is just like one of the hardest things I think in game dev is like sustaining yourself while you're building this thing, because it's a long term, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And like there are multiple ways you could do that. Like some people, you know, save a bunch of money from a job and have a nest egg, and they live off of that while they're making the game. Some people, you know, work on their game part-time while they're working at another job, and that's a thing that can be done as well. Like not every game has to be so ambitious that it takes 5 years of your life full-time. So there's good ideas out there, and games that can be built on a smaller scale, and maybe it's just building a smaller game in your part-time and then putting that out there, you know, so you have some experience. And like that might be the thing that like connects you to somebody else. And there's also there's like government grants, there's like other type of funding. So like there's multiple ways, and publisher just happens to be one, and it works for some people but not everyone.
Well, let's talk about, I can count on my hands. I'm going to guess your funding sources. I've seen a couple of them. Publisher? Kickstarter. Which, by the way, how much did the Kickstarter raise?
256,000, I think. Canadian.
Woo!
Woo! So our dollar's not.
I mean, it's still some money. It's still some money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume you make some money with social media somehow.
No. Is
Yes?
there a way that I can do that?
Yes, I'm actually doing it right now.
Oh, wow.
I am doing it right now with this podcast.
Well,
Thank you so much, Devon.
You're
I'm going to make
welcome.
some money from you.
We'll have to talk because I was. That would be lovely. And
it's great. It's actually the best kind because it's recurring.
Yeah. And I mean, that would be nice. And maybe someday that's in the cards. We also got an Epic Mega Grant. Which if anybody is unfamiliar with Epic Mega Grants, it is a fund that Epic Games, who makes Unreal Engine, put together. They set aside $100 million. This was probably 5 years ago. Don't quote me on that. And they're taking applications on their website. All you have to do is just Google Epic Mega Grants, and you can apply. You don't need a prototype. I mean, everything helps. You can add whatever you want into this application. They want to know how much you want, and they want to know how you're going to use Unreal Engine to kind of help bring Unreal Engine to more people. And yeah, they're some of the grants are essentially free money because they don't check in. They just want developers to succeed. So I'm really I'm really big on that program. I mean, I don't think it's easy to get in. Like I applied and it took them probably 6 or 8 months to get back to me. But I did get a grant, and that was really helpful. Where I'm from, we have a digital media tax credit. So that means that some of the marketing spend and some of the spend from employees and hiring is offset. So they'll give you a tax credit back. So for example, the Kickstarter we made, 250,000 or whatever, but we did run some ads, and those ads cost money. But one of the things that these digital tax credits covers is marketing. So that was part of that. So we got a lot of that ad spend back. So that depends on totally like where people are in the world and what's available. But you have to look because you never know.
Okay. So we just heard your story, and I guarantee you, and this is definitely not a negative thing, but the people listening now are going to go, man, I wish I was as lucky as Devon. And it just seemed like the stars constantly aligned for people like Devon, and they aligned for people like Thomas. And I have one question for you, and hopefully that'll answer those feelings that people might have. My one question for you is, how would you rate your ego? 10 being you're an egomaniac and you don't take criticism. 1 being you feel like you're incredibly humble, and anytime you get criticism, you take it seriously.
I think by saying that I'm humble, doesn't that mean I'm not humble? But
yes, so this is what's called a catch-22.
Yeah. But I personally, when I say to my wife that I'm humble, I think she says I'm not. But I think if you were to ask one of my friends, they would say that I am. I don't know. I think I am. And
I think that's hilarious. A wife is never going to say that their husband's humble
No.
because you're like in the same house all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. But I definitely try to take criticisms. And I think you have to, if you're going to be marketing your game and putting it out there, you're going to get negative feedback. It doesn't matter how good your game is. Your game could be the best game in the world, and you'll still have people not like it. But if you start to hear things multiple times, and sometimes there is a truth to that. So
Yes.
so I try to put things out there, and if I see someone commenting, like, I will look, and if there's multiple people saying the same thing, then maybe I have to change that, or maybe I should do this, and like, there's often get some really good ideas.
Well, I think a golden horseshoe, a giant golden horseshoe up my butt, because I've been told that by some of my family members. And if I get that, if I'm told, hey, you have a golden horseshoe up your butt, the way I take it is I don't say, well, I was born with that. Instead, the way I think of it is it magically starts appearing. This is such a strange visual. But this golden horseshoe up your butt magically starts appearing the more feedback you take and the more willingness you have to listen to advice of people who are just a little bit higher up the ladder than you. They don't have to be at the top, just a little bit higher. You know what I mean?
And not only that, in proportion to how hard you work. I think I heard this somewhere, and I wish I could quote where it was, but it was like, luck is a train that rides through quite often, but we don't always have the ticket. So that ticket is like the hard work and preparation. So if you're working hard on something, I mean, it just happens. It just usually happens that you have that luck. So, I mean,
yep.
Yeah.
But the humility is really a directional variable in that metaphor. Meaning, I would hate to be on a train leading like straight into a mountain or like straight to hell. And humility is where you go, hey, am I on the right train?
Yeah.
Or like, do I need to get off and get on a different one?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't tell you how many times, I've had people call me, or they'll reach out to me, or they get on Discord or whatever. We'll go get lunch, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, Thomas, tell me how to do what you're doing. Like when it comes to games or YouTube or whatever. And I'll give them the exact freaking framework that I've been using. And I'll say, this is what you do, X, Y, Z. And it'll like just completely go over their head because they're like, no, but I want to do it this way. Or no, I want to do it that way. And they just don't listen. I'm not saying I'm the end all be all. I'm just saying if somebody's doing something you want to do, maybe you should just like listen and try it. Oh my goodness, like we're in this beta testing phase and it's brutal. Like so much feedback from game developers who are better than me. And they're just like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. And my initial response is like, screw you. You're wrong.
In your head, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Not in real life.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll sit there, I'll take a sip of my coffee, and I'll think, okay, this person made $5 million on their game. And they have overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. Maybe I should listen to them. And so I'll begrudgingly open up Unity, grit my teeth, make the frickin' change of the stupid flashlight this, or oh my goodness, you seriously feel like the player speed needs to be this, whatever, I'll do it. And lo and behold, it's way better. So you just gotta listen to people, and you can't listen to people unless you're willing to ask people like Devon and say, hey, Devon, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And it's going to make you feel sick, and it's going to make you feel nervous, and your hands are going to shake, and you're not going to want to hear the advice because it means you're going to have to work harder. But that is how you build the golden horseshoe.
Yeah.
And you work hard and you listen. Would you agree?
I would agree. And not only listen, but like understand that just because one person did it that one way doesn't mean that you have to replicate exactly. But there's always tidbits of information that you can take and use that. So if you have 10 mentors or people that you follow, I mean, there might be just one small thing you get from each of them, and they combined into something that makes your path, because everyone's path is going to be a little bit different.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Well, Devon, that was a killer podcast. You're one of my, I shouldn't say this because you make other guests feel bad, but you're one of my favorite guests.
Oh.
You are very, very, very easy to talk to.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, dude, we need to have you on again, and we need to talk about like your actual game. But I will say this, people listening, go ahead, click the link below, wishlist Elements, which is an open world co-op RPG inspired by Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's a big undertaking. You're insane.
It is.
But
I am. Yeah.
Cool, man. All right. Anything else you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up here?
Just if you want to do something, just do it. Just do it.
That's good. And will they fail?
You will fail, probably, but that's fine, and just learn from it. I try to tell my kids that all the time. It's like, you're not going to be great at everything. I mean, you can be good at anything, but you can't be good at everything. So if you work hard enough at one thing, eventually you'll be great.
That is a beautiful note to end on. Sweet dude. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out. That was fun.
Appreciate you, man. I've been following you for a long time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Devon. Take it easy, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
By the way, if you're like me and you always dreamt of making an indie game as a full-time job, I have a free webinar below that goes into exactly how to make six figures with just a demo. I was just like you for years. I thought I had to make a game in its entirety before getting a paycheck, but there's actually 3 ways to make six figures before even finishing your game. I've done this multiple times, so check it out below if you do want to go full-time indie. And thanks for watching.